They put their parole eligibility date. Right. It's accurate. They give their parole eligibility date, but that date can actually move up because, you get more good time the more you're there. So your eligibility date can move up. So especially if you have a long sentence, like a, 10-year or 15-year sentence, and remember, once your good time and your flat time equals a quarter of your sentence, you're eligible for parole. So over time, if you're a state-approved trustee 3, or even a 1, or a line 1, you may actually move up. That date may move up. And with the exception of what Jeff was talking about, if you get a set-off, it's a year set-off. It's not, the good time, it really doesn't matter after that point. Yeah. And then the projected release date, that it says projected release date. People say, oh, they took my short way. Only about 47% of people make their short way, which is their projected release date. And that's when the good time and the flat time equals the sentence. Only about 47% make that. It's another opportunity to go home. It's just called discretionary mandatory. And not everybody has that. If you've ever had an aggravated case, ever had a 3G case, you'll never have what they call the short way or projected release date. Even if you have just a drug case now, but 5 years ago you had an aggravated robbery, you're never going to have that opportunity to come up at your short way. And you'll never get to keep street time if you've ever had an aggravated case. So I know somebody wanted to know about street time. So if you have a non-3G case, and I'll give you an example. Okay, so say you have a 10-year non-aggravated case, and you did 3 years in TDC on the non-ag case, so you owe 7 years. If you get out and you do 3.5 in 1 day on the street, and then after that you get revoked, you'll keep your street time. If you do less than what you owe, less than half of what you owe on the street, you will lose all your street time. If you have a 3G case, or any kind of, or if you've ever had a 3G case, even if the one you have now is just a dope case, you'll never keep your street time. So you'll lose all your street time if you get revoked on the last day of, you'll get revoked. It doesn't mean you won't come up for parole again. I mean, I've had guys a lot, like they'll have a, say they'll have a 30-year sentence. I had one a few years ago, he had a 30-year sentence for, I think, aggravated robbery. He was a real true discretion. He was a true mandatory, and he got out at 10. He'd been on the street for, I think, 13 years, and then he got a new felony. And he was going to lose all of his street time. He was going to lose it all. And that's the problem. No matter how much time you've done on the street, if you have a 3G case, you're going to lose it all. So that's something to consider. It goes to how much time you have served. So it goes, if you got a 30-year sentence and you were on bond for 2 years, those 2 years don't count. It's on the date you started serving. If you got 30 years, the street time. I don't understand, Mark. Are you talking about the time you have remaining? Or? On the 10. You did 3 in prison and 3.5. Right. So yeah, that. Right, it goes the date of arrest. I think it's actually the date that the blue warrant is filed. I can check that to be sure. Yeah, I'll check that. I can check that. Yeah.
Let's say someone's going to prison for the first time. What's the likelihood that they get parole after the first?
So many things. It depends on what parole board you go to. There's 7 different parole boards in Texas. Yeah. Right. Sometimes it's 1 out of 2. Sometimes it's you have a great chance. Sometimes it's better than 1 out of 2. Like I said, everybody is different. I have people that have, given me tax returns for the last 2 years before they were incarcerated. People with good education. People with mitigating factors. I mean, it's all very individual. It's really hard to say. A guy that gets 10, has has never been to prison, but has no GED, has a bad juvenile record, has no job history, he very well may not make it. But the guy that got that same sentence and he's got a GED, 2 years of tax returns, a lot of support, he probably will. You know, it's so hard to, what you do is you just present the case to the commissioner or board member that has it, and you just, I guess you advocate for that client to that particular commissioner or board member. Showing that they make money, they're able to make a living. Right. Right, that they're able to hold a job and fit in. I mean, there's so many people that, you know, that, that they get out, they maybe get out and they sell drugs again. Maybe that's all they know how to do, and they know they're going to go back, and they just keep doing it and doing it. But somebody that maybe has 2 years of tax returns or has a really good job history or has his boss write a letter saying what a great worker he is, that person can probably be okay on parole and make the first one. The same, yes. Sometimes the same way. You know, no, they don't do more time. There's a lot of undocumented workers that still have tax returns or still have proof of employment for the last 2 years or have some really good mitigation. I have guys that maybe been married for 20 years and have 4 good kids. They look at all that. It's not, it's like an administrative hearing, basically. No, they don't hold the detainer. The bad thing about it is if you're an illegal alien, you can't take any classes or programs in prison. And typically, if you're able to go to prison and take programs and classes, you're going to have a better chance of parole. They don't let the illegals take anything except for what they call peer health education, which is like the STD class. But the illegal aliens don't get to take those classes, so it can be harder for an illegal alien, but not always, not necessarily. They look at all their factors as well, and yeah, they look at everything. Yes?
You said there are 7 different parole boards in Texas. Obviously, there's going to be discrepancies
Right.
in terms of the percentage
Uh-huh.
of granting, good time, maybe termination, whatever. So, say you've got, and every client's got them, they've got their witnesses on one side of the state, there's one parole board, and the client himself might be housed in a different part of the state.
Right, right.
And you discover, hey, the parole board where the family is, and their system get to has a better percentage than.
Now, the parole board where they're incarcerated in that region, there's different parole regions, 7 parole regions. The parole board, they're different. The parole boards handle different prisons. So each parole board, say the Austin Parole Board handles, I guess, I don't know how many, they each have their set of prisons that they handle. It's not where your family lives. It's where the person is incarcerated. That board is which determines whether they leave on parole or stay in prison.
You can't file a motion.
No, you don't file any motions. It's not the same. It's not court. You don't file motions. What you, yes, it's different. It's not like going to court. What you a lot of times do, you'll do conference calls. You will call what I do a lot is, okay, say my client is at the All Red unit, and his family's in Houston or Kansas or Washington. We do conference calls and we talk to the lead voter in the case, and that's how we get that accomplished. There's no motions. There's no rules of evidence, which is sort of good in a lot of ways. I think it's really good. It's basically almost it's kind of like a punishment hearing, but it's very, very informal. It's not like going to court at all. It's very informal. And you can have your witnesses be in another state and conference call them in and go through everything. And all that information will get known. And you can submit everything through, a lot of things we write, a lot of my clients, I have them write a lot of letters. I have their boss write letters. We send pictures. and it's called a parole packet. It's more informal, and you send it to the parole board beforehand. Jeff?
What, if anything, can you tell us about parole in absentia?
Oh, as far as parole in the county? Okay, like I was talking about that Retzlaff case, probably didn't do a very good a job of explaining that at all. But those guys get paroled in absentia. So say you got a 3 or 4 year sentence, but you've been sitting there 3 years or 2 years, and you passed that discretionary mandatory date. The parole board has to give you 30 days notice of that date. And of course, if you've already signed, if you signed for 4 years, you've already been there for 3, that date, that discretionary mandatory date, when your good time and your flat time equals your sentence, has long since passed. So you're going home. That would be the parole in absentia. Very rarely does anybody make parole in absentia other than that Retzlaff situation. That's very rare that you'll make parole in absentia otherwise.
Well, the reason I asked is, before my stroke, about 2 years, I started to keep up with it, because I have guys in my county that could ride. I just started keeping up with it, and if you do a plea, another plea, you got to follow them. And they get out there, it seemed like, with that 3 year period, they were same kind of stuff you're talking about, drug case, no violence, nobody got hurt, nobody resisted, no caught, no tried free cheese. It seemed like everybody was hungry and not even.
Yeah, I just don't ever see that. The only times I see that are like the Retzlaff situations. They're not doing that I have seen. Those are the only ones that actually parole in absentia, the ones that actually have passed that date without that 30 days.
Sort of off of that, it seemed like to me then that they were getting out, trying to be careful how I put it, but it seemed like they may be sitting a long time, they plead and they get out, just a few months later, whereas if they plead 6 months, it seemed like sometimes that there was a leading faster, they were getting out, and the parole process was starting.
Right. Well, that happens. The parole process would start quicker the faster you pled, but you're usually going to go to TDC. You're not going to PIA out of the county. Yeah, you're not going to get out of the county. You're going to go to TDC, possibly. It takes 2 to 3 months.
She may start getting better time credit.
Once you get to TDC.
But when she leaves, you get chip up.
Yeah, because you're going to.
You don't sit in the county until you're up here at the job. You plea early, you're going to plea somewhat up here at the beginning, but
Right.
every time you go up here, you're doing 30%.
Yeah, you get a little bit more time after the 6 months. You're right. You're right about that. So, just yes.
I get a lot of waiting for the phone board. I know I'm using the procedure. If they work with candidates, they get sent home. What I do, I find it strong person that they file a motion for shock.
Right.
The judge grants the motion. She has to bring the defendant back, or he has to bring the defendant out of hearing. And at that time, you can put everything in play, if there's a job waiting, if the come in and come on. And generally, the best time to do that would be like on Friday afternoon. The court is, all
But but if they're going to make parole, it's better to be on parole than on probation. I think it's better. It's easier to be on parole than on probation, especially since probation is still a conviction. And they might make parole as fast as they would make shock probation, and they're away from that judge who already gave them all these chances and is going to load them up with conditions. Sometimes it's just better to be on parole than it is on shock probation. But I mean, every case is different. I was going to tell y'all. Okay, some things that you can do before going to TDC to possibly do less calendar time. Like I said, try to stay on bond until sentencing. You're going to get, again, more good time once you get to TDC. If you're languishing in the county, you're only getting that, a shorter amount of good time. The other thing is the processing of your paperwork. Once you get to TDC, it gets processed a lot faster. Languishing in the county, even if you're waiting on an appeal, it can take a lot longer for them to get to your paperwork. What can a client do to increase chances of parole? I would say get a GED while out on bond. Try to get a job, even if it's McDonald's or Wendy's. Get some kind of a job. You look much better. They have a point system. They take points away from you if you didn't have a job within 6 months of coming to prison. They take points away from you if you don't have a GED. So great advice if you think your client might be going to TDC is tell them to get a GED, tell them to get a job, I don't care where it is, so that they can tell them, I was working within a week of going to prison, I had a job. It makes you look better for parole. You look like somebody who can, potentially make parole better. Also, if you have an alcohol problem or something like that, go to AA, get the sign-in sheet, send it to the parole board. They're interested in things like that. Also, the Hugh Stone or Tango Blast or whatever gang that you want to be a part of, see if you can get out of that gang. Tell them when you get to TDC, go see the gang sergeant and tell them you want to renounce any gang membership. That'll help as well. If you can get rid of your gang tattoos before you go to TDC, just anything to do with a gang, you're going to be not good for parole. That's not a good thing. They do not like that. They dislike that. Yes. Oh, tattoos. You go to the gang sergeant. There's a procedure. You can't just say, I'm renouncing. You go to the gang sergeant, and they check your mail. They check who you talk to. They check you for 2 years, and it's very specific what they do to check